I chose to do my movie analysis project on the movie Knocked Up. So Knocked Up focuses on two characters, Ben and Allison. Allison is a middle-class mature woman, while Ben is immature, lives with roommates, and still acts like he is high school and doesn't have any cares in the world. So Allison works for E! News and gets a promotion and decides to go out and celebrate with her sister at a nightclub, which is when she meets Ben. Her sister leaves her at the bar, and Allison decides to stay with Ben and his friends. This is where it all goes downhill. Allison stays and drinks too much and ends up having a one-night stand with Ben. Weeks later, she finds out she is pregnant with Ben's baby, and she tells him, and from there, this is when they start to form a relationship and see where it takes off. So the overall relationship theme. I chose to pick Ben and Allison and their romantic relationship. The interpersonal theme. They share a common goal and objective, which is to be there for their baby. They are both very different individuals and have different backgrounds, but they accept each other's differences and learn to actually really love one another. They are similar in the fact that they want to be there for their child. They go through the different stages of relational dynamics, but end up really coming together and bonding. So the first question, what cultures and co-cultures were present within the relationship? How did the cultures and co-cultures affect the relationship? Ben and Allison's main cultures do not affect the relationship. It is actually their co-cultures. Ben's main culture is that he is a Canadian that moved to America illegally, and Allison is a true American. They are both from the same age group and era, but the way they view life and their lifestyles are completely different from one another. For Ben, his co-cultures are that he is an immature guy that lives with a bunch of roommates, kind of like he is still in high school. He is not really grown up yet and doesn't think he has any responsibilities. He doesn't have a real job, but instead is trying to create an inappropriate website with his roommates. He constantly is getting stoned and drinks at any time of the day. The activities he chooses to partake in really define his co-culture. With Allison, she is a mature and successful female with real responsibilities. She has a serious and professional job with E! News and lives with her sister and her sister's husband and kids. She seems to have life put together because she had just received a promotion in her job at the beginning of the movie. Her activities are working in a professional environment, helping take care of her sister's kids, and drinking on special occasions. The two co-cultures that brought them together, however, were the activity of drinking at a bar. This affected the relationship because it led them to drinking too much and them having a one-night stand. When Allison finds out she is pregnant after a one-night stand with Ben, she decides to immediately tell him. She is a responsible adult and has no idea how this has happened, but wants to tell Ben what is going on. Now that they are in this situation with Allison being pregnant, they decide to get to know each other and force a romantic relationship. The code cultures really play an effect on how the relationship turns out. Ben's activities of getting high with his roommates affect the relationship in a negative way. For example, in the movie, when Allison is sleeping over at Ben's place, an earthquake happens and Allison is in the bed alone while Ben is up getting high. She determines from this that he is more worried about getting high than protecting her and their baby. She gets up and has to take herself outside and then finds out that he was in the living room getting high. Allison's co-cultures don't mesh well with Ben's because they are essentially opposites. However, their mutual objective of wanting to be there and taking care of their child helps keep them together. They both come together because they really do care about their baby. This is where they both agree on something. They both believe in their cultures that taking care of a baby is the main concern. With Allison being pregnant, Ben knows that it is right for him to stick around because it is his kid as well and that they are both in it together. This is important for the relationship to grow, and it is important that both their cultures value this. The next question is, what role does perception play in this movie? How much do cultural influences, cultural biases, or cultural stereotypes affect perception? And provide specific terms and examples. So, perception plays a big part in this movie for both characters. Ben's perception on the world is different from Allison's. They both view and see differently because of their cultures. Ben is very simple and views the world more simply with no cares at all. Allison is more complex and sees issues and topics as more serious. An example of how Ben's culture altered his perception was when they were back at Allison's place after the bar at the beginning of the movie. When they were being intimate, Ben was trying to put on the condom, and Allison thought he was taking too long, so she said, "Just do it already." From Ben's perception, he took the comment literally and just didn't worry about the condom anymore. His perception was altered based on the way his lifestyle and culture is. It makes sense why he took her comment that way, because he doesn't really think before he acts and just lives in the moment. He doesn't have responsibilities like a job to worry about. From Allison's perception, she really meant just hurry up and put the condom on. With Ben and Allison having two different perceptions and letting their different cultures influence these perceptions, it led to her becoming pregnant. There are clear cultural stereotypes that play a role in perception as well. So Allison is a pregnant woman who is not married and who got pregnant from a one-night stand. In her culture, this is not how this should happen and is basically frowned upon. She's embarrassed and it really eats her up inside that this has happened to her. Her perception on becoming pregnant is really different than Ben's. To Ben, he knows that it is not the traditional way, but he is still proud that he is about to have a baby. An example from the movie of this pregnant stereotype coming into play with their two different perceptions showing is when Allison and Ben are leaving the baby store and they run into Allison's friends outside. Her friends are definitely from a completely different culture than what Ben is used to. It seems like they are middle-class college graduates who are kind of stuck up, and when they come to Allison, they ask her if her sister is pregnant again, because they are not thinking that Allison will be pregnant, because in their minds, they know she's not married. But when the question is asked, Ben jumps in and is proud and doesn't even think twice about lying. He just tells them that Allison is pregnant, and when he says that, they kind of look at her odd and judge her. This really shows the two different perceptions on the issue. Allison views the whole being pregnant as non-traditional and almost as an embarrassment. But to Ben, it is what it is, and it doesn't want to hide it. Another instance where cultural stereotyping affects perception is when Allison is on the red carpet and trying to interview the stars. All they see is Allison pregnant, and they constantly harp on the fact that she's so big and is going to pop at any time. They don't take her seriously and don't even want to answer her questions that she really needs to ask for her job. Their perceptions of her that she's just some pregnant host that he knows. They're just stereotyping her, and then they move on, walking away from her, not taking her seriously. This is a culture in which these stars see a pregnant female and immediately think it's appropriate to comment on the fact, when in reality, they should be taking her seriously and not even worrying about her appearance. Next question. How much did culture impact the perceived and presenting self of the characters within the relationship? If you don't think that culture had an impact, explain why. I think that Ben and Allison's co-cultures that they each have adopted are what impact their perceived and presenting self within the relationship. I think that in the very beginning of the relationship that their perceived selves were hidden from one another, and they did not necessarily share all of their thoughts and feelings about themselves. In the beginning of the movie, it was evident that their presenting selves were being shown, and the way they were acting was a direct reflection of their co-cultures. They first met in the beginning of the movie at the nightclub. Ben was showing his public image, which is what he wanted to show off. The way in which he presented himself was definitely impacted by his co-cultures. He came off at first as someone who was confident, trying to thrill. He acted in a way that was acceptable for his age group and the social cultural norms by drinking and being very talkative and friendly. At the same time, Allison was not showing her true colors or her perceived self, but was also putting on a presenting self-image based off of her co-cultures. She followed her social culture just like Ben and was drinking, talking, and being friendly. This is what initially attracted the two to one another. They were attracted to someone that adopted the same cultural norms as one another. They were drawn in by the similar activities that they were partaking in. However, later down the road into the movie, Allison and Ben started to show their true perceived selves. As they got to know each other even more, they started to show their private sides. They were not hiding or pretending to be somebody else. They were not putting up a front anymore, and their true colors were showing. Allison started to show her mature adult side, and Ben showed his immature boyish side. Ben's culture is all about partying and getting high. He has no responsibilities or cares in the world. To Allison, she has a serious job, rarely makes bad decisions, and seems to have her life put together. When Ben and Allison initially tried to make their relationship work for the sake of their baby, their perceived selves come out, and they do not really mesh together. Considering the characteristics of a competent communicator, would you consider anyone from the movie relationship to be competent? Why or why not? After watching the movie, I do not think that Ben is a very competent communicator. He has a lot of growing up to do, and as he does start to grow up and pick up more responsibilities at the end of the movie, he still has a lot to learn. I think that a lot of the arguments and fights that happened between Ben and Allison could have been avoided as a more competent communicator. For example, in the scene where Allison and Ben go to dinner after their one-night stand, Allison tells Ben that she is pregnant, and he answers and blurts out immediately, "What the F?" and starts to blame her and say, "How could this happen? I thought you were protected." And then she snaps back with, "No, I thought you were." Clearly, there was no communication here, and his responses to the situation at hand were unhealthy too. It would have been more appropriate for Ben to know how to choose which behavior to use and the skill on how to use it in this instance. He should have considered where he was. He is at a restaurant and should not be putting out inappropriate words. He should have taken a step back and thought about her perspective and how she was feeling. Also, if he would have thought of the end result before he lashed out, it would have been better for him as well. In the end, he's going to have to deal with this as well with her. It is not just Allison's issue, it is his too. So if he would have thought before he spoke and chose a better behavior, the conversation could have gone a lot more smooth and also would have made Allison feel a little more comfortable about the situation. Another example from the movie where I thought Ben didn't show any characteristics of a competent communicator was towards the end, when it was Allison's niece's birthday party and decides to come up and make up with Allison at the party. When he gets there, he tries to pull her over to the side and apologize for everything that had gone wrong. He was unsuccessful in his apology to her because the environment and circumstances in which he did it were not the best. First off, he tried to do it in the middle of a little girl's birthday party where Allison is clearly very busy, entertaining, and helping her sister run the party. He also picked the wrong time to do it because the night before, he went to Vegas and partied and did drugs. Allison knew this and obviously did not respond in the way he wanted. Ben really needs to work on his self-monitoring. Self-monitoring helps you to understand yourself better. He really needs to pay close attention to his own behavior and actions. He needs to be able to see himself from a detached point of view and to really see how his actions and behaviors affect the ones that are around him. What impression management strategies were used by the characters and why? Were the strategies successful? Why or why not? I think that Ben and Allison both used the impression management strategies of gaining compliance and managing relationships. It is evident that Ben tries to gain compliance with Allison in their relationship because he tends to act in a certain way in which he thinks that Allison will appreciate. He knows if he acts in a certain way, that it will have a positive effect on Allison's thoughts of him. For example, in the movie, when Allison tells Ben she is pregnant and they decide to start a relationship, Ben is constantly coming over to Allison's place where she lives with her sister. He knows that he needs to do these things, although he would rather be with his friends smoking or partying. He knows that showing up and playing with her sister's kids will influence Allison to take in a certain way towards him. The strategy was successful because Allison thought he really cared and that he really wanted to give the relationship a shot. I think in the beginning he was just doing it to gain compliance, but towards the end he was genuinely doing these things because he truly cared about her and knew that these were the right ways to act and treat her, especially because they were having a baby together. They really started to fall in love. In the movie, Allison uses the impression management strategy of managing the relationship. In the beginning, Allison was playing up a front, acting like everything was going to work out, and was showing how brave she was to Ben. She was careful in how she approached subjects and topics because she didn't want to seem like she didn't have it all together. Obviously, as the relationship progressed and got stronger, the strategy didn't work as well anymore. She was unable to hide her emotions and put up a front. For example, in the movie, when she was going into labor at her house, she kind of lost it and didn't appear to be put together anymore. She called Ben up and wanted him to immediately come over. She had to stop putting up a front to him and managing her impressions. She let it all out, and it actually bettered the relationship in the long run. Overall, Allison and Ben had a unique romantic relationship together that had its ups and downs, just like any. But the main interpersonal theme of them sharing a common goal together over their baby really brought them close together, regardless of their differences in culture, perception, and communication methods.